and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight and for your ongoing support. I'm Becky Whitmer, the Managing Director of ACT Theater, and I ask you to please join me in honoring the land where you reside. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we are on the unceded land of the Coast Salish people, and specifically the Duwamish tribe. They're Indigenous people from tribes across the country who have members who reside here today, and we honor them also. Thank you. It's wonderful to be in community with all of you tonight to share an update on the state of the theater and also to bring you close to the exciting productions coming soon in our digital season. I'm going to share an update on ACT Business and then turn it over to John Langs and our guest artists. There will be time for a Q&A at the end of the program, so please write down any questions and we'll facilitate a discussion at the end of the hour. I want to start with some heart-filled gratitude. Your support as donors has made it possible for ACT to continue during the pandemic. It has been almost 1 year since we stopped producing in the building, and we have continued on our path to survive, stabilize, take care of people, and model the future. And we never actually check the box and move on from many of those priorities. They are all in motion at some level all the time. And last summer, once we knew more about our timeline and the long haul ahead, we added Create to that list. And I hope you were able to tune in to many of the digital programs that we offered, like Letters Aloud, the ACT Local Playwright Series, presentations of plays with national partners like Christina Wong, or It Can't Happen Here, or Until the Flood, which is still available online, or our presentation of Shoe with our partners at SA Teatro, or the ACT Benefit, or our radio play of A Christmas Carol, which aired on public radio twice and was also streamed online in almost 2,000 homes. By honoring our mission and staying connected to patrons of ACT, like you, we were able to end the year in a strong financial position that allows us to plan for a reopening. We ended 2020 with a surplus, thanks to ticket holders who converted their purchase into a donation, and also thanks to the many supporters who donated to ACT over the course of the year. Those investments and the federal grant we received allowed us to maintain staffing of 19 people, to be able to pay the utilities and maintenance of the building while it is in hibernation, and allowed us to hire over 100 playwrights, actors, directors, and video editors for the digital season. And now we're hopeful to receive additional federal funding thanks to the second stimulus package that hopefully is coming soon. Those funds will be critical to our reopening strategy, which has a tentative date of October of 2021, where we hope to have some performances in the building, likely at a reduced capacity. To do so, we will still need to meet herd immunity levels of 70% locally, and also to make certain that our facility meets airflow and safety standards. We'll work on that over the coming months as new information about requirements is made available. But we certainly don't need to be the first theater to reopen. Safety is a priority always, and we have confidence that the ACT audience will be flexible as well if we need to adjust plans along the way for safety of our audiences, artists, and the staff. At this time, we're focusing on one show at a time in the building, so we will not have multiple offerings or community groups performing in our building in our initial reopening plan. But once we do reopen, ACT's main stage season calendar will follow a fall to spring cycle. It's a change that we've been striving towards for years due to the challenge of filling theaters in the beautiful summer months. However, we've delayed changing the calendar in the years past due to the disruption that it would cause for subscriber renewals. But now the opportunity is here, and the ACT board has voted to approve this change in our performance calendar and also our fiscal year to end at June 30. It's a change we're excited about, and of course, we can answer any questions you have about how this impacts your ACT experience. This past year has also provided ACT staff, board, and artists an opportunity to evaluate our programs and our priorities. In 2019, we launched a strategic plan with a new mission, vision, values, and 5 foundational goals focused on equity, financial stability, our facility needs, branding and identity, and strengthening leadership. We're now renewing and evaluating those commitments as they are impacted by the pandemic and the racial justice movement, and making changes within our structure to truly live our values for equity and inclusion on stage, behind the scenes, in our offices, and throughout the entire organization. ACT is working locally with other artistic leaders to have a community-wide commitment to equity, and ACT also participated with 85 other theaters nationally in partnership with the 10 Chimneys Foundation and Black Theater United to commit to an anti-racist field nationwide. Please visit our website to read a statement on our commitments, as well as updates on our infrastructure, including the formation of our Inclusivity Working Group, the Artistic Curation Committee, and an Artistic Ethics Committee. This commitment of equity and inclusion means that we aspire to have a culture of belonging, safety, and representation for the entire ACT community. And it is an honor to do this work in partnership with all of my colleagues and to share it with all of you. And as our community grows, ACT will thrive. Now I'm going to turn it over to John and our guest artist to talk about the exciting programming coming up in our digital season.
Thank you, Becky. Great job, and just great job all year shepherding us, Becky. I'm just so grateful for you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's great to be here in space with you. I hope you and your loved ones are safe and have been or plan to be vaccinated soon. For us at ACT, this has been a once in a lifetime moment. It's been a little scary, it's been a little existential at times, but we remain full of gratitude to our community. It's because of your belief and the actions taken by many of the people in this room that ACT will survive and continue to make art through this storm that we find ourselves in. I wanted to share a thought that I came across recently that helped me through a tough patch. I'm paraphrasing it from Annie Lamont's book. She writes about writing. The book's called Bird by Bird. And she talks about, so why does art matter? Art matters because of spirit, because of heart. Art decreases our sense of isolation. It deepens and widens and expands our sense of life and feeds our soul. When artists make us shake our heads with the exactness of their work, or even make us laugh about ourselves, our buoyancy is restored. And we're given a shot at dancing with, or at least clapping along with, the absurdity of life, instead of being squashed by it over and over again. It's like singing on a boat during a terrible storm. Can't stop the raging storm, but singing can change the hearts and spirits of the people who are together on that ship. That got me through a rough patch, and I hope that helps you. And so tonight we are excited to take a look at the art that's on offer at ACT Theater in our 2021 digital season. And we hope it helps restore your buoyancy, if that's what you need. But before we get to programming, I did want to talk a little bit about what has been going on behind the scenes. 2020 brought with it so many challenges, and also the opportunity to stop production for a moment and think on who we are and who we would like to be. Within the larger racial justice movement, there has been a specific call to our field, both nationally and locally, to re-examine the systems that have contributed and constructed American theater as it is now. And that call, or more appropriately, that demand, is to find a more equitable, anti-racist, socially just, and inclusive way to produce theater. And part of answering that call for us was to turn inward and take a hard and honest look at policies and procedures. And fortunately, we had some great leaders to lean into this process with us. Since 2016, ACT has been making invitations to smart, talented, creative, passionate artists, all from different backgrounds and lived experiences, to join ACT on its long journey. And the core company is a group of artistic collaborators who support the mission of building community at ACT. The core company was originally proposed, its original purpose was to encourage an environment of excellence while creating a home for local artists to experiment and grow. But in 2020, the core company redefined itself as an integral part of the reimagining of ACT Theater's ethical mission. And members serve as an artistic advisory council that helps guide ACT on its path to making meaningful contemporary art. So that council has changed our working infrastructure, with the goal to ensure that more diverse voices are at the tables where decisions are being made, to put systems in place, to hold ourselves accountable as we work towards making ACT a truly welcoming, inclusive, and multicultural endeavor. As Becky said, we published our work, developed in consort with the core company, the staff, and the board of directors. That document you can find on our website, and it includes both where we assess where we are and where we are headed. And the document was published in a spirit of transparency, not perfection, in order to hold ourselves accountable to the change that we are committed to. And as we acknowledge this work is unending, we certainly welcome your feedback and collaboration along the way. And while that work continues, we also took the time to explore and interrogate where ACT is headed artistically. This thrilling exercise is through a series of discussions with many constituents. We kept asking the question, the center question at ACT Theater: what does it mean to be a contemporary theater now? And as we were making our way through that question, it also seemed that it was being simultaneously answered in the ACT Local Play Development Programming thread. Through its inaugural year, the ACT Local program, in partnership with Trial and Error Productions, we workshopped 7 contemporary plays by local writers. That work was inspiring, and the conversations that took place in the outward-facing playwright panel series continues to point to this rich pool of talent that we are so lucky to have as a city. And you can still check out some of those conversations on our YouTube channel. There's a great deal of pride and outpouring and support for this work from the constituents that we spoke about, that question of what is contemporary theater. And this group did not mince words. Those who follow the theater know that in the past decade, it has become increasingly difficult to distinguish one regional playhouse from another based on the fact that we're competing for similar programming. And often that programming is the programming that's been blessed by commercial forces, and that in some minds legitimizes the work and drives ticket sales. And there is nothing wrong with ticket sales at all. But in this new moment, when we're going digital for the first 6 months of this turnaround year as we change the fiscal year, we're seizing the opportunity to ditch the vending machine mentality of regional theater and answer the call to build up our own community of artists, to take some bold risks in form and content. And that has led to this 2021 digital season that we're about to embark on. Local artists developed every one of the offerings of our digital season, all of it exploring new ways to create content. And I will be joined by 4 of them tonight to share their thoughts behind the work. Although these stories are radically different in genres, from true crime to mystic comedy to docudrama, if you are looking for a connective thread about the story of this 2021 digital season, a unifying theme that ties these works together, here's what I have to offer. Each of these plays, in some way, is about bringing the past into the light as a way of self-realization. Together, they point to the idea that wrestling with our past, both personally and nationally, is the only way to see one another and ourselves more clearly. And so it's my pleasure to introduce the first offering of the season that was developed straight out of the ACT Local program. After the workshop, we all thought that WAD, a new play by Keiko Green about a young woman who finds a pen pal in a man who is imprisoned on death row, a story about isolation and the imagination and the fantasies that we indulge in to feel human when we are trapped in our circumstances. We all felt that this story seemed to speak in perfect metaphor to the time that we are living through. And the production itself was recorded in isolation by the actors and edited like a narrative film by director Amina Kaplan, who last brought her incredible talent to act in the 2016 production of The Royale. So WAD was simply too good not to share with as wide an audience as we could find. But I could talk about this adventure all night, but I have a great friend with me, the playwright, Keiko Green, core company member, joining us, I think, from San Diego, where she is completing her MFA in writing. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for having me. Yes, I'm in San Diego.
I'm so glad that you were able to join us.
It looks like I'm like in a really sunlit room, but it actually is just great lighting.
You have got great. Oh, Keiko, I'm just so excited to talk to you about this play. So I want to ask you in front of the audience to just give us an idea of, it's wildly imaginative, this piece, which you'll get a taste of in a second, but where this idea, the seed of this idea came from.
Yeah. I think that there's a huge generation of us who grew up watching kind of over our parents' shoulders episodes of Murder, She Wrote and Columbo, and then that graduated into a love for true crime eventually. And I am definitely one of those people. Ever since that podcast Serial came out, and then suddenly there was like a shift in the whole in how we kind of consume those true crime stories. And I have been pretty obsessed with it for a while. I'm that person that in road trips, all we do is listen to these podcasts. I watch episodes of Dateline. And I had to kind of eventually question myself, just like what is it about these stories that is pulling me in so much. And I had heard specifically that women are more drawn to these stories because it is a way to be in control of them because usually and in the stories for the most part, women end up being victims. And so this is a way of kind of taking control and in how we engage with these kind of horrific events that happen. And I had so many questions about that. It really brought up so much. And so I had to kind of investigate internally, what is it about this that makes, it's weird. It's a gross kind of, it's a fetishization, it's an obsession. It becomes kind of consuming. And, it's not just listening to, it's like listening to a podcast and then stopping your run to like look up what the guy looks like and where does that come from, and so that was a huge part of it, just kind of questioning in myself. And that's our character Nice, who is our teenage girl. And she is driven by those same impulses. And the other main, aspect of this, or at least the inspiration of it, was kind of a deep dive into my own thoughts about my own really complicated gray area thoughts on the death penalty. I grew up in the South, I really had to kind of carve out these opinions on my own because I'm a liberal person from the conservative South, and just and so now, what does it mean to think like I'm a person that's anti-death penalty, and then hearing about the Golden State Killer getting caught, who had terrorized, tens and tens of people over decades, and then him finally being caught, and then just kind of wondering, sure, on paper I am anti-death penalty, but when someone like this, hearing all of the victim stories, is caught, I don't know. I really find myself in this interesting gray area. And so those are the two things that I just wanted to kind of investigate in myself, really.
I have just a quick follow-up question on what you just asked, because I find that your writing's fearless. I feel like you're fearless about those dark corners that a lot of us are afraid to look into, and over again when I read it. So my question is, when you're writing in your process, are you magnetized there? Does it? Some people are magnetized towards that which scares them because there's a lot of energy in the process of exploring that, or do they just come very freely to you? I'm thinking particularly of a lot of the fantasy sequences, which explore sort of these very interesting corners of these characters.
Yeah, this was a really interesting piece in that once the characters felt really solid, all I had to do was kind of let them go and just see where they went, with an idea of something I was driving towards. But I will say I have been kind of surprised in myself how I've been often told that my female characters are rude or mean or too mean, or annoying or whatever it is. And of course, those characters are probably more myself, so I feel called out. um, but also there is some I find um, I actually find a tenderness in writing the character that is not like me. I find those characters actually sometimes easier to mine. I'm sure part of that comes from we're so hard on ourselves. So when I'm writing a character that is coming from a little bit more similar to my own lived experience, it's a little easier to kind of mine all the flaws.
Right.
And through the workshop, I think we found, a little bit more what's driving Nice and her arc a little bit better. But it was interestingly Jim, who I found so easy to write. I mean, it was I feel I feel more connected to him weirdly than the person that I'm actually, on paper more similar. But yeah.
Well, I want to ask you this question because when we came to casting and we came to actually choosing this play, you're a very prolific writer. There were a lot of choices that we could have used in Act Local, and you were very sure about this play. And I think it had something to do with the voices you were hearing in your head and also its scale.
Yeah, I mean, there was another play that we were initially
Yeah.
going to be working on. And it's so interesting because I think as a writer, I had started wondering, what makes a regional theater play? And I had started kind of like losing my way by really kind of reshaping what I wanted to do into something that I think people wanted. Um, and so I did that. And then this became kind of a side project. WAD became this project where I was like, well, while I'm doing this, while I'm doing that, I can actually experiment with this thing that I really am passionate about. And it feels so right that that's the project that ended up kind of getting a fire behind it, that we all agreed that this is the one that feels right. But yeah. Wait, I kind of lost my train of thought.
Well,
Wait, where were we?
I was just asking, like, you
Oh, I
very,
remember.
okay, go ahead.
Great, thank you. I completely lost my train of thought. Yes, and so and Juan just seemed so right, especially for that moment. It's about two people who are lonely, disconnected for whatever reason. Jim clearly because he's literally in a cell by himself. And Nisa's isolation is a little bit more complicated. And it's and at the time, this was, what was it when we started talking about it, was maybe May or April of last year, right when we were feeling this disconnect from all of our communities and our families, and feeling so lonely, and just wanting to reach out to somebody. And so not only did the content of this feel so right, but also the structure of it, being two people who are literally never technically in the same space, or are they? Um, and creating these fantasies together just felt like something that we could accomplish really well over over this virtual kind of theater thing that we're all figuring out as we speak. And so
I'm
yeah, and
smiling
so
because we did think it was going to be pretty easy, didn't we?
yeah, yes, we did. And I will say, the simple version of it in the workshop of just
Yeah,
two people in squares, that even worked with this piece. It worked.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I'm actually amazed. I have a writer brain. I don't have a director brain. So I was really shocked by what people were once Amina and everybody else came in, like what they were able to accomplish, because that was just so far beyond what I had anticipated. Yeah.
I wanted to just have you tell us a little bit about the voices that, casting was sort of the easiest casting decisions we made, because you came in and you said, here's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, you said something like, yeah, and do you have anyone in mind? And I said, Rachel and Avery.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, great. And,
Yeah.
and it felt like a check. Yeah, they're and seeing them finally work together, it's really fascinating. I'm sure we'll talk about this in a minute too, but getting to sit in on some of those that shoot, you know, with them having a little headphone in, and it's not like they were shooting one side and they were completely separated from the other person. I mean, they're in conversation the whole time, truly shooting two sides at the exact same time, which I've never quite seen. I haven't experienced that in this past year. I feel like we're doing. I know that you know, we're also like learning from other theaters, but truly it seems like something really, really special. But the way the two of them, they're just different. I just never see those two actors together. You know, there's something about Avery seems so classic and kind of I mean this in the best way, Avery, just kind of strange in a really appealing way. And I guess that's actually where they're similar is Rachel has this you know, she's this like really contemporary, she takes up so much space energetically on stage and on screen. She just commands space, she demands it. And Avery is someone who does that with a really low energy, or
Mhm.
almost sometimes almost like a absence of energy. He can just sit back and somehow your eye is drawn to him. And so the two of them together are just an unstoppable force as far as I'm concerned.
I know, Amita felt that way in the room, and I've just seen the dailies. So we have a clip. We have a clip. And a caveat on this clip is that, you know, we got the agreement of both Keiko and Amina to show our audience at home just a small bit of this piece. Do you want to set this up now, or do you just want to launch it and we'll talk about it after?
Let's let it roll and then talk about it after.
Let's do that. That sounds fun. All right, Rob. Thank you. Here's Juan.
Going somewhere, baby?
Oh, Jim, you frightened me.
You look surprised to see me.
I was so worried something had gone wrong. Terribly wrong.
You shivering?
Well, the window's open. It must be a chill. We'll be a doll and take care of that, won't you?
Take care of that? Like how you got Harry to take care of your brother, or how you took care of Harry?
I'm sure I don't know what you mean.
Now listen up, baby, and listen good. You and me, we were something good for a while, but that's all over now like a gun that don't fire right and all we got is empty shells. I've seen the light, you hear me? I'm tired of these games, these parlor tricks. We're gonna be straight now, once and for all.
Oh, that's all I want. All I'm asking for. Oh, I can't live like this anymore, Jim. Take me away. Take me far away from here.
I'll take you anywhere. Anywhere you want.
Jim. But first, close that window.
I mean, that's the best cliffhanger ever. I'm still getting used to just being in that world that you've created, and Amina. And before you tell us a little bit about the setup of this thing, why don't we invite? I think Rachel is here. Rachel, can you jump on with us? Hey, there she is. Rachel, I've been watching these dailies now for a week, and I just have to say, you're a revelation to me on film.
Stunning.
It's pretty lovely. And this is just one of many facets that this playwright has given you. Yeah, tell us a little about, you know, this is a question I need to ask you, like Nice, to you, like, what was the most interesting thing about playing her?
Ooh, well, Nice for me, I felt like the one similar thing I felt between us, like really strong, there were a lot of things and a lot of things that I didn't feel that, but like there were a lot of things. But it with Nice, you know, being younger than me, how with at least I felt this with me and a lot of people when you're younger. One way you can mask like feeling just really sad and alone and unsure of where you're at is like taking pride in like the weird things, like the niche, quirky things, like, oh, you haven't seen Donnie Darko, like, oh, like you may be popular, but you haven't seen Donnie Darko. Like, oh, you haven't, you know, ever talked to a prisoner before? I'm writing to one right now. Like, oh, yeah, that kind of thing where I felt kind of alone and self-conscious in school, but like I was like, oh, my brain is bigger than all of y'all's brain. And she takes a lot of pride in that because she's so lost, like we all are, and we all hide that in different ways. And I felt that with Nice too, like, let's talk about documentaries. That, but I felt that, you know, like, let me find a way to make myself bigger than you because I already know I feel smaller. That sort of thing.
I know that person, and I think you brought her right to the surface in this film. So thank you. And Keiko, do you want to just comment a little bit about, you know, that moment in the piece,
Yeah.
just contextualize?
Yeah. This is our cold open, so truly there are no spoilers in there. Yeah, it's what's fun about these fantasy sequences is we're calling them, which is these kinds of we soon learn that both of these characters are kind of concocting, mostly Nice, are able to concoct these kind of fantasy locations and fantasy experiences where they're living out you know, something that has to do with her obsession with death, whether it be something that's a little bit more like The Crucible, or whether it's something that's a little bit more Double Indemnity. What's fun about all of those moments is that they're never maybe this is myself giving myself a pass to a way to give myself a pass, but by because they're not ever, you know, they're never straight taken, they're never taken directly from the source material. They're kind of Nice's imagine, you know, having never quite probably seen the movie, but maybe heard about it or seen little clips. It's like she's asking someone who's never seen a movie like that to create it in her mind. And so that's what we end up seeing. And so it's close, but not quite there. And that's kind of where the fun lies, I think, is where we're living in this kind of in-between place.
Love it. I just absolutely, and the creativity that it asks for from the director and from the actors to just jump into those fantasies. Rachel, are you still there? I have one question I've got to ask you. Did we lose you? Did we lose your connection? Oh, well, I hope that Rachel will rejoin us, and I can ask this question at the end with the rest of the questions that the audience gets to ask tonight. So, Keiko, thank you so much for being here and for sharing this. We'll stick around. I'm sure people are going to have questions about this piece, and I'm going to just move us on tonight.
Thanks for having me.
So the second offering comes from core company member Reginald Andre Jackson. And Reggie is an artist that I have known from the first play I directed here in Seattle. And since then, Reggie and I have had an ongoing conversation through the years about theater and the history of theater. And if you don't know Reggie's work as an actor, I just wanted to give you a taste of it. Now, this was directed by a fellow company member, Claudine Nacco, with the assistance of Hannah Moots, David Craig, and edited by Nick Edwards. And here is Reggie in action.
Democracy will not come today, this year, nor ever through compromise and fear. I have as much right as the other fella has to stand on my 2 feet and own the land. I tire so of hearing people say, let things take their course. Tomorrow is another day. I do not need my freedom when I'm dead. I cannot live on tomorrow's bread. Freedom is a strong seed planted in a great need. I live here too. I want my freedom, just as you.
I loved seeing Reggie on the set of Sweat. That's the show that we left. The set is still standing in the Allen Theater. This year, Reggie is in the midst of crafting our second offering, The History of Theater, by, for, about, and near. ACT is delighted and honored to be partnering with the Hansberry Project on this piece. It will be directed by Valerie Curtis Newton. And The History of Theater by, for, and about us is a guide, a theatrical tour through many of the high and low lights of African American theater. We begin 200 years ago by meeting the intrepid former members of the African Company, who in the days of slavery went toe-to-toe with the largest professional theater in the US. We take a brief trip through vaudeville in its many trappings. Broadway's first Black stars share a tale or two. And then Seattle takes center stage in the 1930s when President Roosevelt, his New Deal, brings the Emerald City a federally funded Black theater in the form of the Negro Repertory Company. How will the city's new crop of theaters respond to the civil rights movement? What is it like heading a Black-run theater in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s? And this tour not only aims to breathe life into these forgotten figures, but we will also be speaking with living theater artists about their experience, what they have, and what we can learn from them, and how Black theaters moved forward from the movement we are now in. So here now is my friend, Reggie Jackson. Are you there, my friend? Hello. Hey,
Hello.
I love watching you do that Langston Hughes poem. It definitely made me think about our first conversation about this piece. And I know that you have done an enormous amount of research about this one. And I just wanted to ask you, you can hear the epic scope of this story. What has surprised you the most in the research?
I would have to say that the will of certain people, the fortitude, and in a surprising way to find out about people like Pat Chappelle. And he's no relation to Dave Chappelle, but there are similarities. So he ran a vaudeville troupe 100 years ago, longer than 100 years ago, hired 70 Black artists, singers, opera singers, dancers, comedians, minstrels, the whole nine. And he was able to travel the country with them, provide shelter, food, dining cars, sleeping cars, to travel, and to survive that through the South. To take it all over, and was huge. I think the only group that was bigger than him at the time was Barnum and Bailey. And for that to understand that he didn't have to report to white managers. He didn't have to rely on anyone else but him and his crew, his troupe, and what they were doing. And that was pretty shocking to find that happened over 100 years ago. It's the same type of fortitude that the first actors back in New York at the African Grove had. Those stories I feel like are important. We don't hear about them enough.
And sitting in on that first reading with you and Valerie and that cast, I learned a lot. I mean, just first of all, a straight up history lesson, and also about the perseverance that it has taken through the ages. But I also wanted to ask you, in that reading, you discovered a kind of narrative. You discovered something about the piece itself and how we were going to tell that story. Can you talk a little bit about how that shifted in that moment?
Yeah, a good deal of that comes down to our director, Valerie Curtis Newton, and people that were gathered to help with that workshop. Many of them company members, Claudine Nocco and R. Hamilton Wright and Amy Thone, Lorenzo Roberts, and we also had Tracy Michelle Hughes, a couple other artists, but they're all really intelligent theater people, and will no doubt be part of the history of our theater in this region, if not the world someday themselves. And initially the piece had a little bit more of a documentary style to it. I'll tell you about the creation of some of Seattle's theaters, some of what their seasons were like. And as interesting as that was, when they were breathing life into the actual characters. And a lot of times I had chosen dialogue that was straight from the actual artist. But in several cases, there wasn't any of that. So I had to concoct interviews with these people and create dialogue for them. When we got into the workshop process, there were moments where the characters would engage with each other. And we found that telling the story, the history through these characters and having them engaged got us a little bit more fired up. They were more interested in having that be the focus and the energy. So that shifted the way this whole thing is coming about. And now instead of sort of curating a collage type of Frankenstein creation, I'm now writing more of the piece. Although we still have all of those elements in there, and there still will be interviews with living artists about their history.
Yeah, I just, we had a meeting about this piece just today. And every time I have a conversation with you about it or Valerie about it, the richness of this particular history and the importance of saying that you cannot tell American history without Black history. And a lot of times they have been separated. Andrew Creech, who was another playwright working in Seattle, mentioned that in one of his interviews, and it stuck with me. And it's worth saying that we're in the middle of a process, and that this process is of an epic story. And we have discussed about the way in which we're going to deliver this process. And in this, and do you want to talk a little bit about where we're heading right now as of today's meeting, and what we will see and how this piece will unfold? We won't hold you to it because we are in, you are in
yes, there are constant pivots that are happening with this piece. One of the things that we discussed today is transferring it to more of a, I don't know how many chapters there will be, but you will get sort of a teaser that will start at the beginning of this history. And then a discussion about what this piece is going to be. That we're going to try to devote a little bit more energy into creating the piece so that we tackle it in the right way, instead of throwing up some huge mammoth opus to everyone. You're going to get some more probably bite-sized morsels that are a little bit more palatable to chew on.
Well, I will say the one thing we are continually learning about making great work is centering the artist's voice. And I'm so happy to stand by your side, follow you, support in any way I can. I'm humbled to be in the room with this project and just learning every day. So I thank you. I thank you for the work, and I thank you for bringing this story to the audience here in Seattle.
Oh, and I thank you. I mean, I'm learning as much as anybody. So,
we will learn together. We will learn together. Thank you so much, Reggie, for coming in.
all right, you're welcome. Thank you.
We'll see you at the end for questions. In the third offering of our digital season, we are taking the Act Local series a step further. Last year, each offering of the Act Local playwriting panel, there was a panel discussion after each of the 7 workshops that we did. And after each of the discussions, we received basically the same comment from the audience, was this discussion was so fascinating. When am I going to get to see this play? Well, we heard you, and this year we were able to jump a hurdle in order to invite an audience into the process of the Zoom room playmaking. That's been so exciting here at ACT. So at the end of each Act Local workshop this year, we were offering 2 chances to see the plays in live stream enhanced readings. I'm not exactly sure what enhanced reading means. We kicked that over to each creative team to decide, but I know they will be entertaining, and here are the stories that we'll be telling. The first is by playwright Lorenzo Roberts and his play, Hell You Talking About? Raised by their uncle from a young age, orphan twins Roland and Janelle prepare to celebrate their 30th birthday. But an act of violence breaks apart the family gathering, revealing secrets that have been long kept. Meanwhile, a conservative reporter works to reclaim her fan base after a scandal derails her career. Finding magic, humor, and danger along the way, each of them are forced to confront who they are and what they can be. The next in our series is Rebecca Torino Collinsworth play, Crumbs, Migas. In a fictional Latin American country, 2 hungry children are orphaned by a US-backed coup. 15 years later, they return a modern-day Hansel and Gretel to follow the migas, the crumbs they can in search of their father. They discover a landscape of secrets and sacrifice that they are only beginning to understand. This play is developed through compact electric dialogue and leavened with compassion and humor. Crumbs is a play about grief and the grace we encounter on the way home. And the final piece is written by playwright Stacy Flood. It's called The Optimist, or What Space-Time Travel Means to Me. Inspired by the life and work of Jimi Hendrix, this story follows our protagonist, Jesse, on a journey of self-discovery, overcoming monsters, perceived or otherwise, through space, sea, and the heavens. Each setback forces Jesse to examine the true nature of what victory really means, whether such is ever absolute, and how to ultimately come to peace with each step of the journey. So we got to catch up with these playwrights for a few quick questions at the beginning of their adventure, and here they are.
Hello, my name is Lorenzo Roberts.
My name is Rebecca Torino Collinsworth.
My name is Stacy Flood.
For me, a new work, new play development is the lifeblood of the theater.
I have been working exclusively with local playwrights for about a decade, and I've been blown away by the talent that I have been privileged to witness in that time.
I mean, there's just such fantastic Seattle, Pacific Northwest talent, particularly playwriting, acting, theater.
In order for the experiences of everyone in Seattle to be really observed and seen, we need to hear from the local artists. At one point, you know, Shakespeare was a new emerging artist, and every play you've ever seen has begun in this process.
The help of the dramaturgs, the help of the additional professional actors and professional talent that ACT can bring, all of that to me is so important in crafting the best work possible.
I think that ACT Local's program is tremendous.
ACT Local is something that I'm so passionate about.
So I am excited about it, 100%.
I'm really, really happy and fortunate to be taking part in it.
I'm just so grateful to ACT and Trial and Error for supporting local playwrights and supporting new works.
And we're lucky tonight to have with us one of the writers, Lorenzo Roberts. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hello, hello.
Thank you so much. I hope you're enjoying the show, sir, and thank you for hanging out.
Yes, I need to change my outfit from that video. Yeah, from Zoom.
So, I read the synopsis of your piece, and that is one way to tell somebody what the play is about. But we both know that that is not the actual way to tell somebody what your play is about. So, what does this play mean to you, and where did it come from?
Yeah, so this play, the impetus from this play came from me seeing a show in Seattle in 2016 and being in the theater, and a company that I love, a playwright that I love, and a show that I ended up actually really loving, but leaving feeling more rage and anger and frustration than I've ever felt in the theater at all as an artist. And because it very specifically was intended to not be for me. I wasn't the audience it was written for, and it made it very clear from the program notes, from the performances, that the show wasn't for me. I was the only Black person in the room. And then I left the theater, and I was the only Black person anywhere. And I just had to sit with that. And this was also the summer that Alton Sterling and Philando Castile were murdered by the police. And I felt so much rage, and I didn't know what to do with it. And I wanted a space, to create a space. Adrienne Marie Brown, a favorite author of mine, says that all organizing is science fiction, that we create the world that we want to see. And I wanted a space that felt like it was for me, with my hopes, dreams, thoughts, desires, fears in mind in the creation of a theatrical piece. And that's sort of, those two ideas sort of influenced this play. And I think that I don't want to say too much, because I feel like I was very specific about the synopsis because I don't want to give away anything, but it is exploring these ideas of what it means to be Black in America through the lens of superheroes and magic and also a lot of pain.
Thank you, Lorenzo, for sharing that. And also, I was struck for a couple of reasons when I first read the play. First of all, the beauty and the poetry, the heart inside of this piece, and also completely dumbfounded because I did not know that you were a writer. I have known you since you were in school. We both graduated from the same school, and I had the honor of coming back and being a guest artist. And I have admired your talent as a writer so much. We've known each other for a long time, and then the script comes onto the desk, and I open it and I read it, and I was floored. Not that I was surprised. You're a very talented human being, but it made me interested in how your writing journey began. Has it always been there? And this, to me, this felt like a blossoming and a flowering, but only because perhaps I didn't know that was going on.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is something. I've only been calling myself a writer for the past 2 years, but I've been writing in secret for many years. I've been primarily an actor, and I every once in a while I gotta shout out our core company member, because I had some writings that I would ask people to look at. And the first full-length play that I ever wrote, that I was like, I can share this, was I sent it to Keiko. And Keiko was very generous to read my bad play and gave me a lot of great generous notes. And she didn't break my heart, but she gave me some notes that I could use, and was a real model for me, as well as Reggie, as well as Kirsten Potter, of multi-hyphenate artists, people who were actors primarily, but also could create plays and looked at different avenues in the theater. And so part of it for me is just like I've always been a writer, but you have to claim it, you know. I've decided to claim it, and yeah, and I think that, like, you know, the first professional show I did was at ACT as an actor, and now my first professional writing gig is at ACT, and it feels sort of it is a blossoming for me, and I am ACT's baby. That is, ACT is helping me grow up in an artistic sense.
I mean, we couldn't feel luckier that you've chosen us as your home. You know, I mean that. We have a mutual friend in common, also a UNCSA pickle, and she, when she left school, she began to, also a multi-hyphenate artist, run something called the Space on Writer Farm, and just outside of New York, which has been a feeding ground for some groundbreaking Broadway and off-Broadway shows. And I know you spent time out there. I know I kept getting sort of missives from Writer Farm, and I wonder, you know, we talked a little bit, but you've had a ground row seat at some of these young writers who have emerged now onto a national scene.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? And was that an influence for you, or?
Major influence for me. So Space on Writer Farm is an artist residency. A bunch of playwrights from New York go up to this farm that's like 45 minutes away, and they're just there to hang out, and they can work on something if they want to. And I started there in the summer between my junior and senior year at School of the Arts. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time that I saw the world. I didn't grow up in a theater town. I grew up sort of in a small town in South Carolina. And so it was the first time that I saw outside of college what theater could be. And these are, I'm talking like every Tony nominee, Pulitzer winner, off-Broadway, regional theater, international, whatever you can imagine people doing for theater, they were at this farm. And so I would return every summer, essentially, and hang out with people and get to talk to them as human beings, and also talk about art. And really wasn't really much of me talking, it was just me listening and asking questions, which I think, and of course, those artists were very generous with their time to ask me about my life, you know, and that definitely started getting the gears turning for me of maybe I could write, because I'm seeing people who are very accessible, and they're like, here's my email, come to my show, we'll go out for coffee, here's my phone number, like, and it feels like, okay, I have a community of people to rely on in that way. And so I would say, yeah, Space is another home of mine.
Yes. Well, I know that the community that's gathered to watch this particular thing will probably have more questions. Right. I want them to ask you about your cast and the team that you're building. That's my hint to the community who's watching. But I will welcome you back in just a second. I'm going to close this down and open it back up.
Great. Sounds good.
Thank you, Lorenzo. So, folks, just in closing, I want to say that, you know, ACT has been on this incredible inward journey. Evaluate how we make art, and the kind of art we're making in this digital season highlights these values. WAD, the history of theater, and ACT Local Live reflect the commitment to doing what we can to nourish our community by showcasing the remarkable contemporary talent here in our own city. It is an honor to be taking risks in this digital frontier with our partners Trial and Error and the Hansberry Project, pushing the boundaries of storytelling in the way that a true contemporary theater should do to answer the call of this time. Great stories create great community, and while we miss breathing the same air, and we miss it badly, we remain committed to sharing our heart and soul and creativity with our ever-widening audience. And the future is taking hold, and as an institution and a community, we have so many unanswered questions. And art, in this incredible process of inquiry into the unknown, we look forward to taking that journey with you. So thanks so much. And now I'm going to turn it over to Michael Breedman. Hello, friend.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, John. Before I say anything else, I want to say that the chat function should be open, so you can start typing your questions in there. We had a little bit of issues with the Q&A function tonight, We had hoped that you could record those throughout the evening, but hopefully you have not lost track of the brilliant question you had, and can type it into the chat so I can read it to our panelists. I am Michael Breeden. I am the Director of Development here at ACT. Thank you all for joining us tonight to get a little behind the scenes peek at what's ahead in the next 6 months. And thank you for your support. You know, we can create this art because of you. So thank you for being here tonight and hearing more about what you are helping us do. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and invite John, Becky, Keiko, Rachel, Reggie, and Lorenzo to go ahead and turn on their screens so we can start our Q&A. And we may have some questions already. Thanks so much for being so quick, everybody. Give me just a second to start sorting through. John, I know that you had a question for Rachel. Do you want to start with that before?
Rachel, you disappeared. You know, and it's such a good question because I think it's, it took about weeks of your life to shoot this piece and you were in isolation. And can you just tell us about the process of being an actor in this really incredible time?
Yeah, of course. Sorry, my Wi-Fi shut off. It was crazy and rewarding, and I just, you know, being directed over Zoom and doing my own lighting and sound, and not doing it all on my own, but doing like a big chunk of it myself, like with the lighting and the sound and the tech and the set and the hair and the costume. It was really intense, and it also taught me about the world of TV and film too, where I'm just used to, you know, slowly walking into the water during rehearsals and then diving into the water when performances start. This was just diving full on in and going with the flow and doing everything on the spot. And so it taught me a lot about trusting myself and trusting the work, and also what it's like to work in TV, which is like, you don't get 2 weeks of rehearsal. You just do it. And so it was really scary and it was really hard, but it taught me a lot in a short amount of time. It was awesome. It was hard, but it was awesome.
Thank you. I mean,
Can I jump in?
Yeah,
Can I jump in with like an interesting fact that I think is so interesting, that the set designer just what happened at ACT, they actually built a prison cell inside of Avery's guest room. Like, he could open the door and there was just a cell there. I just needed to share that because I think it's so fascinating, and hopefully we'll have some interesting pictures to share, like a behind the scenes or something.
We can auction off that prison cell if you want one.
So this might be a question for Keiko. We have a fellow true crime fan who was interested in if the entire play was shot in black and white, which I know the answer to that, but can you talk a little bit about that and the creative vision behind that?
Yes, great question. It's not all in black and white. The fun thing I'll say, and just to keep it this kind of short to move along, there's actually the editors right now are doing a really great job of kind of mining what the genre is, and in some cases finding the film equivalent and really placing us in each world, and they look really wildly different from each other. So yes, it is not all in black and white. Long way of saying that.
I'm going to put John and Becky on the spot here for just a second. John, can you give us a quick run through of this 6-month digital season? What's the timeline? And then there's a question about what happens when we may come back after we finish this digital season. So that might be a question for Becky.
Yeah, sure. The first one might be a question for Becky. I would say that I know that March 5th is we are heads down to deliver WAD on the 5th of March streaming. We had a great meeting about the history of theater today, and it's coming. I think it's April, and then Lorenzo. You might know quicker than I can open a calendar, but no, maybe here it is. Lorenzo's piece will be available. Please correct me if I'm wrong. March 19th and 20th on the stream. Is that right, Lorenzo?
That's right.
Oh, good. I got it. And yes, Becky, please talk about what's to come.
Yeah, you know, we are modeling that right now in an environment of complete uncertainty, but we do hope to have a project up and running in October. I don't know that it's going to be necessarily part of the subscriber season because it may need to be 50% capacity. It may only run for a couple of weeks, which is really going to limit the amount of seat inventory we have. But we are really hoping to be able to dip our toe back into performing in our building, and trying to think, you know, it might be a show with a smaller cast. We might have to have, 6 feet apart seating in the theater. It's all going to depend on whether or not we're at that 70% level or where we're at with our government restrictions. But the hope is that we can, try to get back in the building and start to turn things back on again, bring our front of house and volunteers back, and, just kind of brush the dust off and get back in there. We're all eager to be back in the building, but of course, safety is key. So we would have a show in the middle of October. In an ideal scenario, we'd have Christmas Carol after that, and then have 3 productions in 2022, in the winter and spring of 2022. So fingers crossed, we'll keep you posted. We're building budgets and calendars right now, and also just knowing things change every week. We'll keep you posted.
Thank you, Becky. I have a question for all of our playwrights, and what has this process been like for you? Right now we're in a virtual world, but did you write the play for stage, for a virtual world? And what was your creative process, or any delineation between stage versus virtual? So I'm gonna toss this to Lorenzo first. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Great. My play was not written for virtual, but I'm working on some other stuff right now. I think it's a really cool medium, and I'm gonna shout out Keiko again because her other play, I saw someone ask about her MSG play that was just produced at UCSD, and I thought it was the coolest way to use that form. And watching what just that little clip of WAD, I think it's a really fun exercise, and as a creative, we love boundaries that we can play within, and and making the best out of bad situations. And so I am interested in trying to create art, although hopefully I won't have to much longer. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
Reggie or Keiko, do you have any insights into that question?
When we started speaking about our piece, that we were still in a world where we didn't know, kind of like now, what was going to happen, and there was a hope that there would be some audience members able to be present with us while there were still people watching over Zoom. I designed the piece with the realization that we may not be back. So hence the interview type of situation, so that people talking to each other in boxes actually makes sense to the piece, as opposed to, but that we would still be able to, when we are able to be inside the theater, open it up in a more theatrical way.
I'm not writing for the digital, or I'm not writing Zoom plays, or what we call Zoom plays. I think right now, both Exotic Deadly, or the MSG play, which Lorenzo just mentioned, and WAD were written as plays. They just have a quality that that transfers well. Not every play does, and those both do in different ways. I am working on though my first animation with my husband MJ. We're doing it's a post-apocalyptic cartoon about the people that work at the Gap.
Rad.
That sounds great. I would love to watch that. I'm seeing a few questions and comments just about timelines and how to purchase subscriptions. And as we close out the evening, there will be a slide with a link that you all can click on or write down quickly. But it should all be available on our homepage as well. So you can see when things are going to be available, when they're streaming, and how you can purchase your subscription. Question for Reggie. How big is your cast?
We're looking at 9 actors at this point.
Does that 9 actors, does that feel like the right number? Do you want to expand it, make it feel smaller? What? It's such a, it's a huge story.
If we were doing it, ideally, there would be a cast of thousands. So we make do with what we can actually accomplish. Multiple double casting. Everybody is doing more than one thing.
Absolutely. This is an interesting question. We have been in a position where we've had to transition to virtual work. But what does that mean for future options? And that could be for the artists on this panel or for John. Now that we've gone virtual, where do we go from here? Like, do we keep virtual? Is it a hybrid? What are you all thinking about as we kind of think about that point where we maybe are vaccinated and we have herd immunity and we can come back? Is there still a virtual element?
In talking to my colleagues, this isn't going to go anywhere. The virtual nature of distribution, we're reaching audiences from different states, from different countries. The idea that you could, that you may not feel comfortable coming to see a show and could, then get a virtual pass to see a highly artistically crafted film or digital version, I think it's here to stay for a lot of people. And I think it's exciting, but I also think it's going to change the way we work on stage. We are getting very sophisticated about filming techniques, and I think that's going to bleed over to green screen and projection, and I think that we're all learning the power of, for lack of a better term, being able to do what movies have done for a long time, which is go anywhere. And to be able to do that on stage. And in all of these plays, there is a moment that is heightened. And I just wonder, as we move back into the theater, we've got a whole new set of skills. I feel that way. I feel like, watching WAD get made and even watching, Rachel, you were talking about your acting work. It was thrilling to watch you adapt, just almost, I'm sure you said it felt hard and difficult, but my God, just every day I came into the Zoom room to watch this filming, you were sharper and clearer about how to work that equipment, that camera, and your work on camera. Becky.
Yeah, just to say something that we're thinking about for our reopening strategy, and there's a lot of logistics to work out and some agreements to be made, but most theaters in the country are planning to do to offer both a stage production, but to do a multi-camera high quality shoot, so that when you want to buy a ticket or subscribe, whether or not you're ready to come back to the theater due to vaccinations, you could, but maybe we're offering in-person performances, you could have a seat in the theater or you can watch it from home. But it's going to be a really high quality capture of the show. And that's, I think, what John is saying. Like, I would expect that to continue from here on out. We're certainly building plans for that.
All right, we have time for one more question, and I saw one. Give me just a second to go back to it. And it's in reference to MSG, Keiko, which I think was brought up earlier. Fan of you, and as a, let me just read it instead of trying to paraphrase. And you also mentioned a project called MSG. I keep thinking about your concept, hit me hard as an Asian American. Can you tell us any more? Progress, production, timing?
Oh, great. Yeah. It's called Exotic Deadly, or the MSG play. Yeah, it's interesting. We did such a fun digital production of it that now people are only seeing it as they're like, this is great as a digital thing. So I'm also trying to, I also have to kind of switch gears and try to get people to think about it theatrically too, which is this kind of silly place I'm in. That's the fear of doing something well, I suppose. But yeah, it's going to be developed actually this March is this the question what's going on with that play? Okay. Yeah, it's getting developed at this thing called Launchpad in Santa Barbara for a week, which I'm really excited about. And it's up for a couple things that hopefully later this year, perhaps I can share bigger news, but it's alive, what can I say? It's alive. It is a really fun play. Actually, I do want to just say one thing about it. I found out that my grandfather worked for Ajinomoto, which is like this company that manufactured MSG back in Japan. And I've always wanted to write about about MSG from as if it was this drug that everybody got hooked on. And so this is what I call, WAD is not this. WAD has a lot of people who do some ugly things and nice things, but a lot of ugly things. Exotic Deadly, or the MSG play, is what we call nice core. Everybody is trying their best, and it's really all ages friendly, and it's a kind of coming of age time traveling action adventure, and it's really fun. So yeah, I'm still trying to find a home for it. So if that sounds good to you, bug these people.
We will
just flood their inboxes.
All of you keep all of us at ACT updated, because we want to share all the work you're doing, whether it's WAD or MSG, and you're just incredible. So thank you so much, John, Keiko, Lorenzo, Becky, Rachel, Reggie, for sticking around for a few questions. We're going to call it a night, but thank you for being here. And to all of our audience, we look forward to seeing you back on Zoom soon. So have a wonderful night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for having us.